find that sometimes lunch is just a meal that gets crammed into your day. You grab something on the run. Well, today on Paula Roy's Favorite Foods, I've got 3 great new lunchtime recipes that are guaranteed to spice up the middle of your day. And best of all, they're great vegetarian and vegan options too. First up, I'm going to show you how to make this delicious, quick vegetable curry. It's kind of soup, kind of stew, and it's just full of flavor. We're going to start by putting some olive oil in our pan. And as you do with most curries, we're going to add in onions. I just love that sound of sizzling onions. It lets me know something delicious is already underway. Next, we're going to add up some ginger and garlic, which have been minced up nicely. And some sweet potatoes sliced thinly. You do want to give it a good little sort of quick stir fry to get everything heated up and to get the cooking process underway. And then you'll stir it periodically for about 2 minutes while the potatoes start to soften. While the potato cooks, I'm going to mix up some coconut milk. We've got 1 can of regular coconut milk here. I don't prefer to use the light stuff. It doesn't have the same texture. Another option, which is wonderful, is coconut milk powder. It has a longer shelf life than the cans, and you can just add water to make whatever thickness you want. This is a great item for camping or for packing food for traveling. I really like the powder. And we've got some Thai red curry paste here, which is really great flavor, and it's not super duper spicy. I think a lot of people think that when you hear the word curry, it's gonna be blow your mouth off spicy, but that's just not the case. So we're gonna whisk that in while we give our potatoes a little stir. They're looking like they're getting nice and soft. And don't worry if it doesn't get perfectly blended in the coconut milk, you'll still be stirring it in the pot. You just kind of wanna break up the biggest pieces of it. So now we're gonna add this to our pan. And we're just going to let it bubble away for a minute. I can see I've got a little more of the curry paste in the bottom here, so I'm just going to get that out. And you can adjust the amount of heat that you like. With this recipe, I do recommend tasting it before you finish it, and it's no problem to whisk in a little bit more of the curry paste if you want it hotter. If it's too hot, you can add a little bit more coconut milk. There we go. And I'm just going to turn the heat up a little bit. The next vegetables that we're going to add are cauliflower. You can mix this up any way you like. Broccoli would be another great option. I just really like how hearty and substantial cauliflower is, and it always seems to survive the trip through the heat in a soup or stew pot. We're going to give it just a little bit of a head start. And now we're going to add in some snap peas. These are the sweet ones with the fatter pods. A lot of people get them mixed up with snow peas, but the snap peas make a real snapping sound when you take them in half. And there are strings on them, so if you snip off one end and pull, you'll get the strings out of them. So we'll add those in. You can see how colorful this stew is going to turn out. And we've got some slivered red pepper, again, for extra color and flavor. Very nutritious with all these vegetables in it. Give that another stir. And just a little bit of salt. I don't tend to add pepper to this because the curry is providing enough of a boost of heat. And you can see it's bubbling away nicely. So we'll just let it bubble for about 2 minutes. And as soon as the cauliflower is soft, we'll know it's ready. I like to serve this over rice or another grain to make it even more substantial. I've got some cooked basmati rice here. It would be great over quinoa, even over barley. If you had leftover pasta, that would be fine too. Whatever you want to just fill your bowl and make it more hearty. All right, I'm gonna give it a taste and see if it's spicy, not too spicy. That's perfect. And now we can just ladle it up. You want to get a mixture of vegetables and the broth as well. This would be a great portable lunch too. You could make a batch and put it in a thermos or just heat it at your workplace. Lots of veggies there, and now we'll get some of the broth. And to finish it up, I love to serve it with a wedge of lime, just because the nice, bright, fresh pop of flavor you get from the lime really brings out the flavors of the curry, and a little bit of fresh cilantro on top as well. There, you can see how fast and easy it is to whip up this great, quick vegetable curry.
I don't know about you, but whenever I eat fruit crisp or crumble, my favorite part is the topping. Crunchy oats, sugar, and all that buttery goodness, what's not to love? I decided to transform traditional crisp or crumble topping into a new delight, and I have to say, these gluten-free bars are phenomenally tasty. You can easily make your own oat flour by pulsing rolled oats in a blender or food processor.
If you're trying to watch your sugar intake, coconut sugar can be a great option for you. You can substitute it 1-for-1 in baked goods in place of brown sugar, and it has a lower glycemic index, so it will be absorbed more slowly into your body. I really like working with it. Another great lunchtime option are these gluten-free fruit crisp bars. I've modeled them after my favorite kind of dessert, which is any kind of fruit crisp hot and bubbly out of the oven. So to start off, we've got some rolled oats here, and most oats are gluten-free, but check the package if you're not sure. We've got some melted butter. You could use canola oil if you don't want to have dairy in your recipe. We're just going to add that in. In this case, we're going to use brown sugar, but the coconut sugar would be another great alternative. Coax it out of this container here. We're making what's very similar to a traditional crumble topping. A little bit of vanilla for a little flavor pop. Tiny bit of salt. Doesn't need too much because the butter I used was salted. And a little bit of baking powder so that our topping will rise a little bit in the oven. So you just stir it together, and it takes a moment or two. And then last up, we're going to add in some oat flour. And I've made this just by pulsing rolled oats in a food processor. You could do it in a powerful blender as well. Of course, you can also buy oat flour. If gluten-free isn't a worry for you, you can substitute with regular flour. We'll sprinkle that in. I really like the flavor of oat flour because it's kind of got a bit more of a nutty, sort of a interesting flavor compared to regular flour. So it'll take a minute or two. As you're working on this mixture, pay attention to any lumps of brown sugar that you might find in there, depending on how dry your sugar was. If you use coconut sugar, it may have lumps as well. So you just need to try and smooth those out with the back of your spatula or spoon so that your topping has a nice even texture. From a make-ahead perspective, you can make this topping anytime you want and store it in the fridge or freezer. I usually have a big bag of fruit crisp topping on hand all the time, and it's a great way to make a quick dessert for an impromptu dinner party or to whip up a batch of these squares. It should look pretty much like an oatmeal cookie sort of consistency, except a little bit more crumbly and dry, but you shouldn't be able to see any dry bits in the mixture. I'm just working to make sure I get up all the butter from the bottom of the bowl. And I'm pretty happy with it now. I can't see any big pieces of sugar in there. So now what we're going to do is take an 8x8 baking pan, which we've lined with parchment paper. And don't worry about your parchment paper not being folded perfectly into the pan. As long as the corners are reasonably tight, that's all you need to worry about. So we're just going to roughly put about half of the mixture into our pan. And you don't need to measure it, just kind of do it by eye. That looks like about half to me. And then what you want to do is press it down, a little bit more I think, press it down into the pan so that it's fairly firm. This is the bottom crust of your squares or bars, so you want to make sure that you press it down evenly and spin the pan around if it makes it easier for you to get into all the corners. Don't forget to press into the middle as well. In terms of the filling, you have lots of options. Any kind of jam would be delicious. Homemade jam, preferably one that you can heat up and have it turn a bit thinner. So what I've got here is some seedless raspberry jam that I made, which is pretty decadent, but it's delicious. And we're just going to drizzle that over top, and you want to, again, cover the bottom crust pretty evenly. You can spread it around when you're done. There we go, and I'll just use my spoon here to spread it in the pan so you can see it's getting into all the corners. And just try and make it a pretty even layer all the way across. I've done this with blueberry jam, with strawberry. I even made a batch with peach jam, and that was equally delicious. Now that that part's done, you want to try and spread the rest of the crumble topping as evenly as you can over the top of the fruit. So I'm going to do this by sprinkling slowly, and I'm going to work my way around the edges first to make sure that they get coated. And if you have any, I had a little bit of a lump of oats there, and I just flattened it down with my spatula. You want the topping to be even so that your bars will look nice and uniform when you go to cut them after they're cooked. At this point, once you've assembled the bars, it's really a good idea to cook them right away. You're going to be serving them at room temperature anyway, so there's no need to bake them up at the last minute before you serve them. And they do freeze really well. I like to bake a pan and then just pop it right in the freezer without cutting them, so I can pull them out whenever I need them. There, now that we've got it evenly covered, we can just sprinkle the rest sort of haphazardly over the top. We're going to put this in an oven at 350, and it bakes until the jam is bubbling up through the top layer a little bit and the topping has turned nice and golden brown. One last shot in the corner here. There we go. And now this is ready to go into the oven. And we've just taken our squares out of the oven and let them cool for a few minutes. They're beautiful and golden brown, as I mentioned. The easiest way to cut them is to lift them right out of the pan by the parchment paper, as I just did. And then if you flatten the paper, you've got a perfect surface to cut on. It's up to you how big you cut these. I kind of like to make them just over an inch square. And just make sure you get a good long knife. Cut them in one direction. And then pivot your board and go the other way. And as I mentioned, if you use oat flour, these are gluten-free, so you can confidently serve them to lots of different guests. And of course, they're nut-free as well, so they're school-safe if you want to tuck them into your child's lunchbox. And now we'll just put a few on a plate. In Nova Scotia, where I come from, squares are considered one of the elements of hospitality, more so than cookies or cake. People always like to serve up a pan of squares whenever anyone comes to call. And these, I think, would be approved by my grandmother. I think we can fit one more on there. There you have it. Our gluten-free fruit crisp bars are ready to enjoy.
Coming up next, I'm excited to share with you a delicious pasta salad recipe. This one is special thanks to a fantastic Asian flavor profile. It's also packed with colorful vegetables, some of which get quickly cooked in the pasta water to save on time and cleanup. I think you'll love the mayonnaise-free Vietnamese-inspired dressing, which is super easy and versatile. This hearty, vegan-friendly salad is fantastic, made with either regular or gluten-free pasta.
Pasta salads are another great lunch option, and this one is full of flavor and crunch and deliciousness. We're going to start by putting our pasta in a pot of boiling water. First, we're going to add some salt. That really helps to give the pasta more flavor, and it means you don't have to add salt to the dressing. I'm using bow tie pasta today because I just love their cute little shapes, but you could use any pasta that's got a little bit of substance, fusilli, shells, rigatoni, even elbow macaroni, probably just not spaghetti because it's not sturdy enough for what's going to happen next. So we'll let that bubble away, and while it cooks, we're going to make the dressing. And this is a Vietnamese-inspired dressing, so it's got a whole lot of different flavor elements, but not too many crazy ingredients. So again, we're going to use a glass jar because I love to be able to shake up my dressing. First off, we're going to put in some lime juice. And then to counteract that acidity, we've got maple syrup. I really like using that instead of sugar because you get a bit more flavor from the maple syrup, but of course you could use white sugar instead. Next up is some soy sauce, and that's another reason why we don't need to add salt to our recipe because it's quite salty. And we're going to put in some sriracha. I really like the chili garlic paste. That's what it's based on because it's just got so much flavor. And if you use a lot, it can be really hot, but if you use a moderate amount, it just adds a nice little kick. Then we've got some minced garlic. And you can buy garlic in a jar, but I really like to mince it up fresh. You can grate it on a box grater or even put it through a garlic press. Now we're going to add 2 kinds of oil. We've got sesame oil, which adds a nice bright flavor. Kind of, well, not bright as much as earthy and really aromatic. And then I'm using canola oil to balance that out. Too much sesame oil can kind of feel and taste a little bit heavy. And that's all we need for our dressing. So once again, we just shake it up, and then it's all ready to go. And now we just have to wait until the pasta is almost cooked, and then we're going to blanch our vegetables in the very same pot. Okay, our pasta is just about cooked, and now I'm going to show you a great dish-saving trick, and that's to blanch the vegetables for the salad right in the same pot with the pasta. So today I'm using broccoli because I find that that goes really well with Asian-style dressings, and also carrots for some color and, of course, more nutrition. And the reason that we blanch them, they just need about 1 minute to 2 minutes to soften them a little. Otherwise, some people find them a little bit too crunchy. And I find in the case of broccoli, it actually enhances the flavor to give them a little quick trip through boiling water. They'll also absorb a little bit of the salt from the pasta water, so they'll have a nice flavor as a result of their time in the pot. So we're just watching them bubble there for a minute, and the pasta is getting its final minutes of cooking as well. And then shortly I will take the pot over to the sink and drain it, and then we'll get ready to assemble the salad itself. Okay, we've got our beautiful veggies and pasta. You can see how vibrant the veggies are because they didn't get overcooked, and that's what we're really looking for here. Now, to add to the crunch factor and also the nutrition, and to make it more representative of what you might find in a Vietnamese dish, we're going to add more vegetables. Here we've got some shredded cabbage, and you can just cut that by hand. It doesn't have to be super fine. Green onions, some slivered red pepper. Very, very typical of Vietnamese dishes, and of course, again, that gorgeous, vibrant color. So now we're just going to give this a little bit of a stir to make sure everything is evenly distributed. And the heat from the pasta and the blanched vegetables will kind of soften the red pepper and the cabbage for us as well. Now we're going to take our dressing that we mixed up before, give it another good shake just to mix it up again. And we'll start by pouring in just about half of it. There may be more than we want, so you don't want to overdress your salad because it'll kind of drown the vegetables and the pasta. If you're making this to take for lunches, it's good to reserve a little bit of dressing because the pasta will continue to absorb as it sits, and you might want to add a little bit more dressing right before you go to eat it. So we'll just give this a nice little stir. It smells so good. I can just smell the sesame oil and the soya and the ginger. It just smells great. All right. Now, of course, what's a salad without a few garnishes? In this case, we're going to put on some pea shoots, and these are just baby pea plants. You can find it at a lot of specialty produce stores, and they have a great flavor, really reminiscent of fresh peas, and they just add crunch and, again, more vitamins. The more veggies you got, the more vitamins, and they're just a bit more interesting than adding a ton of fresh herbs. There we go. And cilantro, because that fits with our flavor profile as well. In this case, I've chopped it so the bites will be a little bit finer than in some other dishes. And last but not least, some sesame seeds to echo the sesame oil in the dressing. And that's a nice kind of hit of crunch just at the very end. And there you go. Our beautiful Vietnamese pasta salad is ready to go with a wedge of lime if you want that extra pop of flavor. I hope I've inspired you to shake up your lunchtime routine with these few delicious ideas. It doesn't matter whether you're having the same things in your lunchbox as your kids. There's no reason why you have to sacrifice on flavor. This Vietnamese-inspired pasta salad is something the whole family will enjoy, and you can make as big a batch as you want, and it'll keep for days in the fridge. The quick vegetable curry is also something that you could prepare on a Sunday and portion out, and then you'd have delicious meals for the whole week ahead. Shake up what you put the curry on top of, whether it's rice, quinoa, or barley, and you're sure to enjoy your midday meal a lot more. Last but not least, let's not forget dessert, which some say is the most important part of any meal. These fruit crisp bars are delicious, gluten-free, and they freeze beautifully, so you can tuck one into your lunchbox for days ahead.